I think I've rewritten the script for this video way too many times, and with the current state of things, I feel like it doesn't even matter because the moment that I upload this, I'm going to be behind on something. Well, so will everyone else maybe, but whatever, let's just do this. Towards the end of last year and earlier this year, I was thinking about how I didn't really have a large list of go-to games that I really loved in 2019. At least certainly not when compared to 2018. Yet here we are in the spring of 2020, and I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about the state of gaming. With this whole pandemic going on, no one really knows what the rest of this year will look like, and I even mentioned in my podcast that I think there's probably going to be some significant delays on some games, and possibly even the new consoles coming up this year. Go check out the podcast, by the way, please, thank you. But we can talk about what we do know. Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of the technical specs of the upcoming consoles and the teraflops and the GBs or the triceratops or all of that stuff. Do I know the information about those details? Sure, I just like following that stuff anyways. But for your everyday consumer, all you really need to know is that new consoles are coming, they're going to be more powerful, your games are going to look prettier, they're going to run smoother, they're going to look great. That's all that really matters. Let's talk about the games. After I get into some of the details about the PlayStation 5 that just got announced earlier today. So Sony had an online event where they really got into the technical details, and I mean the minutia of the specs and the architecture and SSDs. Oh my God, so much talk about SSDs. So for anyone keeping score, yes, technically well, not technically, it is. The Xbox Series X is more powerful than the PlayStation 5. Now, horsepower isn't everything when it comes to games. Go look at the Nintendo Switch, doing great. The Xbox 360 technically was less powerful than the PlayStation 3, but as we learned from that generation, it all came down to the games. And over the past few years, Sony has really established itself as the leader when it comes to exclusive titles. And the only other company really competing with them right now is Nintendo. We don't have a ton of additional information on exclusives for the PlayStation 5 right now, but you can bet that The Last of Us 2 is going to run really well on the new system. You have God of War 2 in all likeliness coming, as will Horizon Zero Dawn and the next Spider-Man. All in all though, it's still relatively quiet on that front, so hopefully as we get closer to the summer months, we get some more information on what launch titles will be available. Really the coolest part, to me at least, about the PlayStation 5 technical deep dive was the information we got around what they're doing with audio technology. We're talking about improvements with 3D space and more realistic soundscape, how the audio adjusts from TV speakers to headphones to even different listening profiles. I think for me, the most exciting part is what that potentially means for VR and how that potentially makes a more immersive experience. So I'll be keeping an eye on that, and hopefully it makes some strides towards hitting the mainstream a little bit more. On the other hand, we really don't have a ton of information on what exclusives the Xbox Series X will offer. And I think we all know by now that they really fell behind this generation. Now with Halo available on PC, I think it's something that Microsoft has anticipated, especially considering that the Xbox game streaming service will be available pretty soon. We'll do a video on that once that's out. It'll be a cool way of enjoying Xbox and Microsoft exclusives without actually owning an Xbox. You'll be able to play it on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, whatever device available, you're more than likely going to be able to play some Xbox games there. So with that, you're probably safer to go with the PlayStation 5 or a Switch if you're considering a console here in the next year or so. Speaking of the Switch, we're gonna get Animal Crossing here. And that's it. I don't know what else is coming out for the Switch here soon. Okay. It's just on the AAA and first party title front. There are games coming out for the console, but when we're talking about blockbuster games, it's really just Animal Crossing, and then that's about it. We don't have any additional information on Metroid Prime 4 or Bayonetta 3, but luckily there are still a ton of indie games on the table. Besides, if you're considering buying a Switch or you just bought one, there's a robust enough backlog of AAA games for you to get through for the foreseeable future anyway, so it's probably not a problem for most players. Now, there were some rumors going around about a potential Switch Pro that I personally was interested in, but most of those rumors seem to have died down. But you never really know with Nintendo, considering that they play things pretty close to the chest. Now, on the PC side of the world, and for you enthusiast PC gamers, things are starting to get more interesting and uncertain at the same time. Both AMD and Nvidia are planning, or were planning, on releasing new GPUs on an entirely new architecture this year, but we already know that Nvidia won't be sharing any additional details that they had planned at their GPU technology conference that was slated later this month. Obviously, we don't know what kind of performance boosts those new GPUs will bring until we actually get them in our hands, but at the very least, if you run a higher end 4K monitor, these should prove to be a welcome improvement. As for AMD, they had previously shared RDNA 2 chipset roadmaps, and we now know for sure that the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 will use a customized version of that chipset. Okay, cool. So hardware information is fun and all, but what about the games? All of this really got me thinking about the transitional periods between console generations in particular. Last year did slow down a little bit on the AAA front, but I think with releases this year, we're going to see these games push current gen consoles to their absolute limit as we close the end of this life cycle. In-depth analysis aside, the Final Fantasy VII Remake demo looked absolutely stunning. The Last of Us 2 is upcoming here in a couple of months, and the gameplay for that looks fantastic. Doom Eternal is getting glowing initial wave of reviews prior to its launch, and Animal Crossing New Horizons should bring a welcome change of pace with its more, let's call it, relaxing gameplay. Hell, even Microsoft has a win with Ori 2 as those games continue to launch and redefine the Metroidvania genre. I'm personally looking forward to Hollow Knight 2. Outside of that, things are relatively quiet, but they should prove to be high quality games. As for indie games that I'm keeping an eye on that don't currently have a release date, and likely won't until things start to settle down, we have Sable. The Pathless. Tunic. Risk of Rain 2, which currently is in early access on Steam. And for these smaller developers, I can only imagine that things are getting more difficult with quarantines and curfews, but it's still worth keeping an eye on nonetheless. So if you have any indie games that you're looking forward to that I didn't mention here, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll check them out. I touched on this briefly earlier, but I do hope that VR starts taking off some more. Obviously, price point here is currently the biggest detractor, as most consumers aren't willing to dish out that kind of cash on a still relatively cutting-edge technology. I do think that with the right improvements and advancements, it can start becoming enticing. I don't know exactly what those are, but it's something I'm going to be watching anyways. So all things considered, if we're looking at the positive side of things, diving into gaming is a cool way to stay connected with other people or kind of just keep distracted if you don't like playing with others. There are plenty of games that in this day and age you can have access to exclusively digitally. You don't even have to leave the comfort of your home, and you can play some games that you are into. You have free-to-play games like League of Legends, Fortnite, and now the new Call of Duty Warzone. There are pretty fun ways for you to practice your social distancing while maintaining some interactivity with other people. As for Warzone in particular, I want to touch on that real quick. I really did enjoy how they're doing the gulag system to help entice players to get back into the game, but there are a bunch of other games available that you can play. I'm personally really bummed out about the lack of sports right now, but you can pop in 2K or MLB or whatever your flavor of sport is, and you can play a little bit of that with your friends. So that's where we are now. As things settle down, hopefully we get some more information and some more clarity around what's happening in the world. But for now, you got some games. Let's play some games together. I think I'll set up a Discord here pretty soon so we can play together if you want. But keep an eye out for some more videos. I have some time here to expand and talk a little bit about the music that I'm working on, potentially setting up a website and some merch. So stick around, and I'll see you next time. With the funk.